Hi, good day. Today's lecture is on literature review and searching for literature. This lecture would be divided into two parts. We start off with literature review, followed by lecture on searching for literature. This is MQB 7001 research method for the Master of Public Health program. Hi, I am Professor Dr. Victor Ho from the Department of Social Practice Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of Malaya. Literature review. What is literature review? It is the second chapter in your thesis. It is a summary of the literature on the topics of your research. Or is it something more? Take a moment to think. What is critical review and analysis? A critical analysis of existing research in your field. It highlights both the strengths and weaknesses of existing research. It allows you to gain a critical understanding of your field of study. It provides you an opportunity to think about what has been done in your field of study, opportunity to think about the similarities, pattern, trends, and also differences across existing research. You will also identify the strengths and weaknesses. You will allow to think about what has not or need to be done in your field of study. The gap in the literature in your field of study provides you the justification for your research. Critical thinking as a student. Think critically and not just look at the fact. Critical thinking differs for students at different levels of your academic career. At the undergraduate level, is to back up your points with appropriate authoritative sources. At the master's level, it is to demonstrate that your understanding of how the knowledge is created. At the PhD level, it is to demonstrate that you can create new and original knowledge. And when you become a professional, it is to review your peers' views and building coherent body of work of your own and assuring others' work. It also depends on where you are in your research journey. Before the beginning, a literary review is used for you to identify the gap for your study and to see how your research will be able to fill the gap. At the beginning, this is when you start collecting data and conduct your analysis. Literature review is important to show that you are continuing in the right direction. In the middle, this is when you are in the middle of your data collection and writing your report. Literature review is useful to put context to the data and results of your study. Are those results coherent with the current understanding in your study area? Or did you identify something different? At the end, before you submit your research report, dissertation, or thesis for examination, it is important for you to go back to your literature review to see if anything has developed or discovered since the beginning of your study. So before the beginning is to find a suitable research question. What is a suitable research question? Is the Earth the center of the universe? Or is the Earth flat? Some questions has already have a definite answer. These are questions that you shouldn't avoid. We are just sharing to you the obvious and also providing you the opportunity to think. How did the researcher or scientist actually answer those questions? How did they know that the Earth is not the center of the universe? And how do they know that the Earth is not flat? How can you prove it? Think about it. Think of the way you want to prove the two questions that we just provided. So establish the term and context. So identify gaps in literature, identify main ideas, and identify future trends. This is what you should do before the beginning of your research. What are the strengths and weaknesses? What evidence is lacking, inconclusive, or limited? What will you add to the topic, and what will you do differently? Suitable research question at the beginning. Identify the gap in the literature. Identify the main ideas. Identify future trends. Find out what information already exists in your field of research. Identify the main methodologies and research techniques. Find other people working in your field. Identify the main theories. During your research and write-up, you should establish similarities and differences, provide a context for your own research, show the relationship between previous studies and theories, and at the end of your research, ensure that the information is current, review all theories, and review all data. Literature review is a process and an outcome. Literature review as an outcome appears in the final draft of your thesis as part of your introduction or as a separate chapter. Literature review as a process, critically engagement, thinking and reading and writing with relevant research on your topic is a crucial and formative stage of your thesis journey. Let us pause again and let the idea sink in. Literature review is a crucial and formative stage of your thesis journey. Let us focus on what we should be doing when we are reviewing and reading the literature that we have just acquired. We should read critically, but what does it mean? Reading critically. Let us think. After reading critically, we need to think critically. And what does it mean? Thinking critically. It is simple to answer some of the questions when you're reading literature review. The what, where, when, who, and how question is easily obtainable from reading different sections of the manuscript. The complexity is answering why. And why do we get this finding? Why is this the result that we get? And that is what we need to do. For the what, where, when, how, and who and how are all very clear when we read the most of the literature that we read. But to answer the question why, you need to think critically and understand the context of the research or the literature that you're reading. It is the why question that you need to think more critically. So, what critical thinking can mean in terms of literature review? Understanding the literature on its own term, testing its viability. Basically, we look at it from the internal validity of the research. And then the research in relation to other argument, whether the research actually can be used in other contexts or based on what previous understanding. Critiquing research in relation to what you want to do. Think about your own literature review. Take another pause. Write down 5 questions or areas that you want to explore. Who are the key players in my field? What are the main ideas or debates in my field? How have these ideas changed over time? What are some of the problems with these ideas or debates? Is there a problem with the methodology? What are you going to do differently? Key players and sources. First stage of the literature review is identify key players in your field and collect all relevant source about your topic. So what is the importance of key player? Key players or the prominent figure in your field. These should be people who are key in developing the theory in your field. Professor David Kogan is the key player in my field of study on work-related musculoskeletal disorder. He developed hypothesis that musculoskeletal disorder usually does not occur in isolation but in groups and involve multiple joints and areas. He also proposed that the cause of MSD is due to both physical and psychological issues. His paper that looks into this, Occupational Medicine at a Turning Point, which was published in Occupational and Mental Health in 2015, state the following. As has been outlined, there is now a range of evidence that suggests that much of today's occupational illness is not simple function of excessive exposure to noxious agents or activities. He proposed that much of the illnesses and disability which currently is attributed to injurious occupational exposure does not arise from underlying disease with detectable organic pathology, but rather is a psychological mediated response to an external trigger that is conditioned by combination of individual characteristics and cultural circumstances. This is his question in 2005. And how did he answer the question? Right. So this is what we say, that this is the key player in my field, which is occupational safety and health. David Kogan is is from University of Southampton, and he developed the theory that occupational disease are not entirely related to the physical component, but also there's a psychological component to it. And he established and developed the study on the cubic study, which is a multi-country, multi-centered study which focus on establishing the hypothesis or testing the hypothesis to see whether the hypothesis actually works or not. So this is what we call how you develop your idea and how you execute your idea, and then how you use the idea. So Prof. David Kogan is the key player in my view. Now, let us think of the key player in your field and how he started off establishing his hypothesis and how he developed and continue to test the hypothesis. That is important. That will basically define how your research is going to be, and also will provide a guide of how you're going to do the literature review, but also provide a guide from how you're going to move when doing your own research. Where to start? All right. Do you need to read everything? No. You don't need to read every book. You don't need to read every text. You don't need to read every word. You need to understand how to read critically and read only the parts that is important in ensuring that you have the correct information. Where to start? What is your story? It is important to understand what is your story. There's many people basically have different story. And this story can come from personal experience that you want to address an issue. It can come from what we call a traumatic situation where you think that you want to solve the problem. Or it can just be an idea that comes up from your supervisor that you want to develop it into your own story. It is important for you to understand that research does not belong to your supervisor. It belongs to you. So you yourself must be able to establish, to think about your story, what you want to do, what you want to say. Then you can map your story. It's important to map your story, which means you map your idea. You start with a question, then you go on to look at different domains to see how does the story fit into those domains. And that would allow you to identify the gap in those domains, in those areas. The next step is to share your story. It's important for you to share your ideas, to talk to people, to ask people, to get more input. It can be your fellow student or colleagues in your workplace. It can also be academician. You can talk to any one of us and just bounce your idea off any one of us. Then we will provide you some feedback, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes it may make you think that your idea might not be solid, might not be secure, but that doesn't mean that your idea is not good. It's just that you need to develop further, read further, and provide better justification of your idea. Share your story. This is important for you to share your story. Let's get started. What should you do? You should always plan your review. Planning is important. How do you want to do the review? What kind of review you want to do? Planning is about organizing the structure of your literature review. Your story will help with this. How will you organize your information? Chronologically, that means from dates. Thematically, looking at it from theme. By trends and approaches and techniques. Major debates and controversies. Or probably a combination of this. But you need to plan how you want to write, and then it provides you a guide of how to actually write properly. If not, then you will be writing going from not really coherent kind of writing, and that makes it difficult to read, and it makes us think that your thoughts are not coherent. It's important for us to understand that you need to have coherent thoughts for us to the, know that you have actually done a good literature review, because your literature review is based on coherent thoughts. Mind mapping software, it can be used to actually for you to as an inspiration. So this you can use also, you can jot down your ideas, move them around, create links, put text on notes, swap between diagram and outline, and transfer them to words so you can have a clear idea. If you don't have a mind mapping software, don't worry. You can just think and just put it on a piece of post-it note and then put it on the wall. All right. So this is an example: self-esteem and obesity in children and adolescents. So what are the things that you want to consider? What are the areas that you want to study? How are you going to move within those areas? So it's important for you to understand how you're going to move in that area. If you don't have software, get a wall in your house and start pasting a post-it note on the wall on the ideas, and then linking it together with a string or anything which you think is usable. Now let us start to write a review. So how do we write review? We start from an overview, the idea, from to think of how you want to look at from the idea perspective, how you look at from the whole idea. You can look at themes, as we mentioned, trends, methodology, chronology, or controversy. So decide how you want to write. Discuss with your supervisor how to write a good literature review. Use heading for different sections of your review is important. Heading or subheading. Provide a summative sign point where your argument is leading. Summarize your review. Highlights the gap in your research. Have clarity in writing. So here are some of the tips of clear writing. Clear introduction. You must always have an overview of the topic, aims of the review, and structure of the review. How you're going to present your review. Thematically, chronologically, controversy, methodology. You need to decide so that you have a clear idea of how you're going to write. Then it's easier for you to write. Clear paragraph structure. It is important to only put one idea in one paragraph. Don't have so many ideas in the same paragraph. Try to make your paragraph succinct. Try to write succinct. Succinct means you present the information as simple as possible without being convoluted. Make sure the subject of your sentence is clear. What do you want to say? The subject is clear. Don't assume knowledge. This is important. You must understand that the person who's reading your thesis, reading your report, might not know what you want. They won't be able to know what you're thinking unless you put your thoughts on paper. So you need to put your thoughts on paper. That is important. That's why don't assume knowledge. Make sure the key terminology and difficult ideas are always explained thoroughly. Ask yourself, does it make sense? Better is to ask your partner or your better half, do they understand what they are reading or not? Be objective and balanced. It's important to be objective and balanced when you're reading. It is good to make it personal, but it is not what we want. We want you to be objective when you're doing literature review. Use signposts to orientate the study, the reader. Signposts are words that you can use to guide the reader on what you're going to present next. How are you going to do it clearly? Don't assume knowledge. Just remember that. It's important for you to remember. Your critical voice and signposts. This is one of the most common weaknesses we find in students writing their thesis, is that they often only describe the findings of the evidence without internalizing the information and analyzing the evidence. It's usually written as researcher A find this in their research. Researcher B found that. However, researcher C found the opposite. The question is, so what? We are not interested in what researcher A, researcher B, or researcher C found. We are interested in why are these evidence found by the researcher? How are you going to use this evidence? What is your conclusion on the evidence? How are you going to synthesize the information? Researcher A, researcher B, researcher C is not important for us. It's important is the information and how the information is conceptualized or context into your research area. So try to synthesize and analyze rather than just to describe your research. Signposting is important. So what is signposting? These are words that you can use to demonstrate how texts relate to each other and also what you think of them. Some of the words like however, yet, moreover, indeed, similar is what we're talking about, linking paragraph or linking ideas that you want to do. Is it a similar idea? Is it you want to add more information, or is it going to be different from what you are saying earlier? So it's important for you to allow signposting words so that the reader will be able to understand what they are reading about. The other important thing is paragraph and flow. So what's a paragraph? Paragraph should only contain one idea. Topic sentence, discussion of topics, and closing sentence. It should contain one idea that you want to describe, and the idea needs to be, there should be a topic and discussion, and then the closing sentence on what you think of the idea that you have described. It must be thematically and grammatically linked. Logical progress from one paragraph to the next is important, especially you're talking about using signposts to actually make sure that there's a logical progression. Demonstrate links in your languages. Use language clearly. Understand language. It's important for us to understand that we must use the correct language. Elastic trends, synthesizing literature. Avoid list-like structure by illustrating trends and patterns. As I say, not to say researcher A say this, B say that, C say differently. It's not what is important. It's looking at from trends and patterns, and how has it evolved over time, maybe in different country, in different area, among different population, among different ethnic group. It's important for you to focus to understand that things can be different depending on how it is applied over different area. For example, research into the thesis title has emphasized the use of colon, distinguishing the thematic focus on a practice. What is different between two methods of citation? Here are the two methods of citation. Read and clearly. There's a non-integral and the integral part of it. All right. Non-integral part means that you put the author's name within the sentence itself. Non-integral is you put the author's name as part of the citation at the end of the sentence. That means the author's name is not part of the sentence itself. What's the difference between the two methods? When do you use the integral method and the non-integral method? The integral citation where the author's name appears in a sentence should be used only when you want to highlight the author, as the author is one of the key players in your field of research, or that he is the person who developed the theory or the instrument that you're going to be using. You should limit the use of integral author in your field. All right. Citation, writing, and voice. Whose voice is dominant? When writers or original author? So these are some of the things. You just read and think about it. Editing and proofreading. Editing and proofreading are the fundamental aspect of a good academic practice. It cannot be further emphasized that proofreading is important. All right. Editing is a process of continuing, revising, and improving your written work. It's often an activity that forms the major part of your writing process. Proofreading, it is the final check before printing submission. It is an important process that helps remove errors and improve presentation. It cannot be further emphasized that proofreading is very important. A good manuscript should have consistency in language and grammar. I.e., if you are using British English, use it consistently throughout your manuscript. It's important to note that you similarly use British English. By being consistent, meticulous in writing your manuscript, it demonstrates to the reader and the examiner that you have also do the same when conducting your study. Being meticulous in your study. It's important for you to do that. That's why we always emphasize there should be zero error, minimum error, especially grammatical error, or spelling error, or language error, as using different language in different sections of your thesis. That shows that you did not actually read the whole thesis and understand the whole thesis. That means you have done your thesis in segment. That is, it shows a lot of things. The way you write, how you present your write-up, how much of the thing is the formatting is important. Those are important things that you need to consider. Literature is an evolving process. It's not final until you submit it for examination. It's important that to know that, because we know that evidence are always being updated, and that is where it's important. And sometimes because you have also identified new evidence, or you have find something new from your analysis of the data, and that is where you need to review and revise your literature to update or to make sure that your data are coherent with the research findings. The main thing is that you should always try and learn from read a good thesis and see how the papers have written. The emphasis is on good thesis, not any thesis. You can also read review on from prestigious journals in your field. It's important for you to read review paper or editorial that provide you the idea of how people write properly, and also what are the current idea the editorial is promoting. Okay, editor is promoting. So what is the purpose of the literature review? Identify gaps in literature, find out what information already exists in your field of research, find out other people working in your field, identify major seminal work, identify main methodologies and research techniques, identify main ideas and conclusion, and theories and establish the similarities and differences, provide the context of your own research, shows the relation between previous studies and theories. Thank you very much. All the best in your literature review. If you have any question, we can discuss it during the discussion session later.